Hi, I'm Svetlana Popko, Assistant Professor of Department of Histology, Cytology and Embryology of Zaporizhia State Medical University. And now I want to present a new lecture, Overview of Endocrine System Histology. So we can start. What is these hormones? Internal secretions carried by the blood that influence the activities of specific body organs. Endocrine system includes glands and other hormone secretion sources. And short information about short distance signaling. There are neurotransmitters and local signaling molecules. Neurotransmitters secreted by neurons diffuse across the synaptic cleft to the target cell. Local signaling molecules, such as prostaglandins, released by injured cells, affect only neighboring cells. We call it paracrine secretion. There is long-distance signaling in our endocrine system, and these functions provide hormones. Animal hormones secreted into interstitial fluid enter capillaries, are distributed throughout the body, and have wide-reaching effects. Nervous endocrine interactions. Nervous and endocrine systems interact. Both respond to the hypothalamus, a common center in the forebrain. Most organs receive and respond to both nervous signals and hormones. This slide demonstrates the main important endocrine glands in our body. Central endocrine glands, hypothalamus, makes and secretes releasers and inhibitors, hormones that act in the anterior lobe of the pituitary gland. Second central endocrine gland is pituitary gland. Anterior lobe makes and secretes ACTH, adrenocorticotropic hormone, TCH, thyroid-stimulation hormone, LH, luteinizing hormone, and follicular stimulation hormone. These tropic hormones stimulate secretion by other endocrine glands. Prolactin acts on mammary glands, and growth hormones affects overall growth. And third central endocrine gland is pineal gland. Makes and secretes melatonin, affects sleep-wake cycles, onset of puberty. Peripheral endocrine glands include thyroid gland, parathyroid glands, adrenal glands. Other organs like thymus, pancreas, testes, ovaries are organs that have two functions: main basic function and endocrine functions. Endocrine functions is second. Thyroid gland makes and secretes thyroid hormones, metabolic and developmental effects, and calcitonin lowers blood calcium. Parathyroid glands, we have 4 glands, make and secrete parathyroid hormone, which raises blood calcium level. Adrenal gland, 1 pair. Adrenal cortex makes and secretes cortisol, affects metabolism, immune response, and aldosterone acts on kidneys, small amount of sex hormones. Ovaries have reproductive function and second endocrine function, make and secrete progesterone and estrogens, affect primary sex organs and influence secondary sexual traits. Testes One pair of male gonads make and secrete testosterone and other androgens, affect primary sex organs too, and influence secondary sexual traits. Thymus. The main important function of thymus is differentiation of T lymphocytes, but thymus gland has also endocrine function, makes and secretes thymoxines acting in maturation of T cells, a type of white blood cells. And pancreas makes and secretes insulin, lowers blood glucose level, and glucagon raises blood glucose level. And short information about the nature of hormone action. Cell communication involves three steps: signal reception, signal transduction, and cellular response. For a hormone to have an effect, it must bind to protein receptors or on or inside a target cell. Categories and examples of hormones. Chemical nature of hormones. Steroids, for example, testosterone and other androgens, estrogens, progesterone, aldosterone, cortisol. Steroids are synthesized from cholesterol. Amines, melatonin, epinephrine, thyroid hormone are amines. Peptides, glucagon, oxytocin, antidiuretic hormone, calcitonin, parathyroid hormone. Proteins, growth hormone, insulin, prolactin, follicle stimulation hormone, luteinizing hormone. There are several types of signaling mechanisms. Hormones and other signaling molecules function in communication among body cells. A hormone travels through the blood and acts on any cell that has receptors for it. The receptor may be at a target cell surface or inside the cell. First mechanism, intercellular receptors for steroid hormones. Steroid hormones are made from cholesterol and can diffuse across the plasma membrane. You know that plasma membrane is bilipid layer, and cholesterol easy can diffuse through bilipid layer. Most steroid hormones form a hormone receptor complex that binds to a promoter inside the nucleus and alters the expression of specific genes. Other mechanism, receptors at the plasma membrane for amine, peptide, and proteins hormones. Large amine, peptide, and protein hormones bind to receptors at the plasma membrane. Binding triggers formation of a second messenger. Second messenger is molecule that release signal into cell. Enzyme converts ATP to cyclic AMP. Cyclic AMP activates a cascading series of reactions. And as a result, synthesis of some specific molecules as a result of action of hormone. Multiple hormone receptors. Look, most cells have receptors for multiple hormones, and the effect of one hormone can be enhanced or opposite by another one. Example, skeletal muscle hormone receptors. Myosymplast, muscle fiber, sarcolemma of muscle fiber has next receptors receptors for next hormones: glucagon, insulin, cortisol, epinephrine, estrogen, testosterone, growth hormone, somatostatin, thyroid hormone, and others. Hormone action. In this diagram, you can see types of hormone actions. First, step 1. A steroid hormone molecule is moved from blood into interstitial fluid, basing a target cell. Step 2. Being lipid-soluble, the hormone easily diffuses across the cell's plasma membrane. Step 3. The hormone diffuses through the cytoplasm and nuclear envelope. It binds with its receptor in the nucleus. Step 4. The hormone receptor complex triggers transcription of a specific gene. Step 5. The resulting mRNA moves into the cytoplasm and is transcribed into a protein. And other mechanism of action of hormones for peptide, amine, and proteins. A peptide hormone molecule, glucagon, for example, glucagon, diffuses from blood into interstitial fluid basing the plasma membrane of a liver cell. Step 2. Glucagon binds with a receptor. Binding activates an enzyme that catalyzes the formation of the cyclic AMP from ATP inside the cell. On this picture, you can see unoccupied glucagon receptor at target cell's plasma membrane, and this one, occupied glucagon receptor, bind glucagon to its receptor. Step 3. Cyclic AMP activates another enzyme in the cell. Step 4. The enzyme activated by cyclic AMP activates another enzyme, which in turn activates another kind that catalyzes the breakdown of glucogen to its glucose monomers. Step 5. The enzyme activated by cyclic AMP also inhibits glucose synthesis. So we have a result for action of glucagon, breakdown of glycogen to its glucose monomers, and inhibition of glucose synthesis. There are the main important mechanism of regulation of endocrine secretion. We have feedback controls of hormone secretion. Generally, releasing hormones are between the hypothalamus and adenohypophysis, and stimulation hormones are between the pituitary and other major endocrine glands. There are two types of feedback mechanism. First, positive feedback mechanism, built up of a hormone to tell a gland to increase production. Response increases the intensity of the stimulus, for example, oxytocin and childbirth contractions. Type 2. Negative feedback mechanisms, built up of a hormone to tell the hypothalamus and pituitary to decrease production. Response decreases the stimulus. Look, it is important to understand the difference between positive and negative feedback. Feedback systems are the basis of endocrinology. First example, thyroid-releasing hormone and thyroid-stimulation hormone. Generalized diagrams showing control of T3 and T4 and sex hormone secretion. First T3 and T4, and then I will demonstrate you diagram of sex hormone secretion. You can see hypothalamus releases thyroid-releasing hormone. Thyroid-releasing hormone arrives to pituitary gland, anterior pituitary, and stimulates secretion of thyroid stimulation hormone TSH. TSH migrates to blood and from blood to thyroid gland. In thyroid gland, TSH stimulates secretion of T3 and T4. Then, in blood, increases level of T3 and T4. And look, please, increasing level of T3 and T4 inhibits function of hypothalamus and anterior pituitary. We have negative feedback mechanism, this one. Next, hypothalamus secretes gonada releasing hormone. Gonada releasing hormone affects all on anterior pituitary. Anterior pituitary secretes follicular stimulation hormone and luteinization hormone. These two sex hormones affect two gonads, ovaries and testes. In gonads, these two hormones increase secretion of sex hormones. In ovaries, estrogen and progesterone. In testes, androgen and testosterone and other androgens. Next, increasing level of sex hormone in blood, and then this increasing level inhibits function of hypothalamus and anterior pituitary. These are two examples of negative feedback mechanism. The hypothalamus and pituitary gland are central endocrine glands. You can see localization of these glands in forebrain, hypothalamus, this one, and in sella turcica, pituitary is localized. Pituitary consists of anterior lobe and posterior lobe. They are different in origin, in structure, and in functions. Hypothalamus is a master integration center. In vertebrates, the hypothalamus and pituitary gland are connected structurally and functionally. Together, they coordinate activities of many other glands. Pituitary hormones affect growth, reproductive functions, and composition of extracellular fluid. And we characterize every gland. First, hypothalamus. Hypothalamus is the main center for control of internal environment. Lies deep inside the forebrain and interacts structurally and functionally with the pituitary gland. Signals the pituitary by way of secretory neurons that make hormones. The pituitary also has a portal circulation, artery, capillaries, veins, and again capillaries. Why? For create a secondary circulation between the pituitary and the hypothalamus releasing factors. Look on this diagram. We can see hypothalamus, and hypothalamus has nuclei of neurosecretion cells, neurons. Nuclei are divided into two groups. First group, small nuclei of hypothalamus. Second group, large nuclei of hypothalamus, supraoptical and paraventricular. Between small nuclei of hypothalamus and anterior pituitary, we have structural and functional connection. Axons to primary capillaries. You can see they bind cell body and capillaries. We have synapses between axons of neurosecreting cells and blood capillaries. Primary capillaries. Primary capillaries are branched from superior hypophyseal artery and migrate through pituitary stalk. Hormones from hypothalamus migrate to blood of primary capillaries. These are these hormones: thyrotropin-releasing hormone, corticotropin-releasing hormone, gonadotropin-releasing hormone, prolactin-releasing factor, prolactin inhibition factor, growth hormone-releasing and inhibition hormones. These hormones migrate from primary capillaries to portal venules, this one, and portal venules are branched into secondary capillaries, you can see, in anterior pituitary. Then, these hormones of hypothalamus migrate from blood from secondary capillaries to the parenchyma of anterior pituitary and effect to endocrine cells of anterior pituitary. Pituitary gland. Pituitary gland is divided into two parts: posterior pituitary lobe or neurohypophysis includes a neurohypophysis, infundibulum, and we called it pars nervosa. Hormones released here are made in the hypothalamus. Only two hormones. These are vasopressin and oxytocin. Vasopressin we called also antidiuretic hormone. Second lobe, anterior pituitary lobe, includes adenohypophysis, Radke's pouch. Look, please. Radke's pouch gives rise to adenohypophysis, yes, and infundibulum gives rise to neurohypophysis. And we called this anterior pituitary lobe pars distalis. Hormones released here are also made here. You can see histological section of pituitary, and you can differentiate three parts of pituitary: anterior part, this one, intermediate part, this one, and posterior part. This is histological section of hypophysis of cats. You can see anterior part, anterior pituitary, intermediate part, in animal is well developed, but in human, no, and posterior part of pituitary. You can see differences between this part in structure. And look, please, these parts, anterior and posterior pituitary, have different origin. Anterior pituitary has ectodermal origin, and neurohypophysis is derived from neuroectoderm, from nervous system. Posterior pituitary function. Some secretory neurons of the hypothalamus makes hormones that move through axons into the posterior pituitary, which releases them. Antidiuretic hormone, ADH. It provides vasoconstriction, gluconeogenesis, platelet aggregation, release of factor VIII and factor of Willebrand, concentrates urine, main effects on kidney and brain. And second hormone, oxytocin, contracts uterine smooth muscle. This slide demonstrates light optical view of posterior pituitary. The posterior pituitary, we called pars nervosa or neurohypophysis, looks like typical brain tissue. You can ask why, and answer it is typical brain tissue is this, it is part of nerve tissue. We have the pituicytes are glial cells, and herring bodies are massively dilated terminal axons from the hypothalamus, and blood capillaries. Blood capillaries are fenestrated type. Look please on histological section. We can see blood capillaries, this one, nuclei of pituicytes, glial cells, and terminals of axons, herring body. There are synapses between terminals of axons of neurons in hypothalamus and blood capillaries. In herring's bodies, ADH, antidiuretic hormone, and oxytocin are storage, and then they release in blood capillaries if it necessary. Interactions of hypothalamus and posterior pituitary. You can see cell body of secretory neurons in hypothalamus synthesize ADH or oxytocin. There is paraventricular nucleus and supraoptical nuclei. The ADH oxytocin moves downward inside the axons of the secretory neurons and accumulates in the axon terminals. Action potential triggers the release of these hormones, which enter blood capillaries in the posterior lobe of the pituitary. Blood vessels carry hormones to general circulation. Interactions of hypothalamus and posterior pituitary. Look please, two nuclei of neurosecretory neurons, paraventricular and supraoptic nucleus. These are axons of these neurons, and we can see chiasma, optic chiasma, this one, and neurohypophysis consists of median eminence, this one, hypothalamo-hypophyseal tract. This is pituitary stalk, posterior lobe, anterior lobe, and adenohypophysis consists of pars tuberalis and anterior lobe. Oxytocin and antidiuretic hormone migrate to neurohypophysis and store in terminal part of axons. Anterior pituitary function. As the hypothalamus neurons produce releasers and inhibitors carried by blood that regulate secretion of anterior pituitary hormones. Parenchyma of anterior pituitary consists of two types of cells, chromophilic cells and chromophobic cells. Chromophilic cells are divided into two types, basophils and acidophils. Basophils secrete ACTH, TCH, FCH, and LH. Acidophils secrete prolactin and growth hormone. This slide demonstrates light optical view of anterior pituitary. The differentiation between acidophils and basophils is usually not too difficult unless the stain is really loosey. Acidophils are stained by acid dyes, for example, eosine, and basophils are stained in purple color by basic dye, for example, hematoxylin. Chromophobes are uncommon and have minimal cytoplasm and no granules. Chromophobe cytoplasm stains close to basophil cytoplasm in color, but is less granular and has a minimal cytoplasm. And also blood capillaries fenestrated type. Look, how can we characterize the histology of anterior pituitary? It has stroma and parenchyma. Stroma consists of dense irregular connective tissue capsule. From capsule deeply to organ, uh, from capsule go trabecules. Trabecules divide anterior pituitary into lobules. In lobules, stroma is presented by loose connective tissue with blood capillaries fenestrated type. Between capillaries, we have parenchyma. Parenchyma is presented by rows of endocrine cells. Endocrine cells, you can see these rows surrounded capillaries. Endocrine cells are divided into basophils, this one, and acidophils, this one. And also we can see chromophobic cells, for example, this one. Interactions of hypothalamus and anterior pituitary. Cell bodies of secretory neurons in hypothalamus synthesize inhibitors or releasers that are secreted into the stalk that connects to the pituitary. The inhibitors or releasers picked up by capillaries in the stalk get carried in blood to the anterior pituitary. The inhibitors or releasers diffuse out of capillaries in the anterior pituitary and bind to their target cells, target endocrine cells. When encouraged by a releaser, anterior pituitary cells secrete hormone that enters blood vessels that lead into the general circulation. There are some syndromes of pituitary pathology. Clinical features mimic the endocrine effects or mass effects. First, functioning adenomas. Galactorrhea in a young woman, non-pregnant of course, is often the expression of an acidophil tumor of the adenohypophysis. Other problem, gigantism or acromegaly, specifically pituitary acidophilism. Cushing disease, specifically pituitary basophilism. It can be adenoma from acidophils or basophils. And you can know symptoms of adenoma of acidophil tumor or basophil tumor, because you know what hormone secrete these cells. Other hypofunction is hypopituitarism. Pituitary tumors, functional or not, non-pituitary tumors, primary or metastatic, can be cause of hypopituitarism. Other causes, pituitary surgery, radiation, apoplexy, for example, sudden hemorrhage, Sheehan syndrome, postpartum ischemic necrosis, cysts, Radke clefts, empty sella syndrome is not a disease, genetic defects. It can be posterior pituitary syndromes or hypothalamic suprasellar tumors. Growth hormone function and disorders. Excessive growth hormone causes faster than normal bone growth. Occurrence in childhood results in gigantism. Occurrence in adulthood results in acromegaly. A deficiency of growth hormone during childhood can cause dwarfism. Look, please, examples of disrupted growth hormone function. We can see Norm, this woman, Norm growth, and this man with gigantism. Acromegaly, this one, man with acromegaly, and age 16, this woman with gigantism. And hypofunction of growth factor, you can see this one. Decreasing level of growth factor can cause dwarfism. Examples of disrupted growth hormone function. Gigantism, excess somatotropin before epiphyseal closure in bones, or acromegaly, excess somatotropin after epiphyseal closure in bones in adulthood. Cushing syndrome. Symptoms: moon facies, this one, buffalo hump, stria. What kind of cells of the pituitary may be proliferation here? Acidophils or basophils? And you can answer that basophils secrete adrenocorticotropic hormone, and basophils tumor from adrenocorticotropocytes can be cause of Cushing syndrome, because increasing level of AT, adrenocorticotropin hormone, can be cause of increased level of hormones of adrenal gland, for example, cortisol. And increasing level of cortisol can be cause of these symptoms. Functioning pituitary adenomas with visualization. Look, please, normal pituitary, this one, and find the pituitary adenoma, you can find this one. Look, please, other section, pituitary adenoma. What symptom of pituitary adenoma can be present in these patients? Bitemporal hemianopsia. What cause of this symptom? Hypophysis is localized in sella turcica, very close to optic chiasma, and it pressed, tumor pressed to optic chiasma and can be cause of bitemporal hemianopsia. And you can see types of hemianopsia because tumor, adenoma, can press optic chiasma. Usually, the bitemporal hemianopsia is not perfectly symmetrical. Why? Because pituitary tumors are under no law to grow perfectly midline. It can be progressed to left side or right side. Posterior pituitary pathology includes diabetes insipidus. Due to antidiuretic hormone deficiency or head trauma, tumors, inflammatory hypothalamus or pituitary. Hyperdiuresis is a symptom of diabetes insipidus. One minute, I have a call. 1 minute. Алло, здравствуйте. Так, готова вже. Угу. Угу. Хорошо, делайте. Угу. Хорошо, спасибо. До свидания. I'm sorry. Next, pathology, syndrome of inappropriate antidiuretic hormone, ADH excess, hyponatremia, cerebral edema, neurologic symptoms, neoplasm, small cell carcinoma, posterior pituitary injury. Third, central endocrine gland is the pineal gland. The pineal body in humans consists of a lobular parenchyma of pinealocytes surrounded by connective tissue spaces. The pineal gland is also derived from neuroectoderm, like hypothalamus and neurohypophysis. The gland surface is covered by a pile capsule. Pineal gland consists of neuroglial cells and axons. Blood capillaries, brain scent. Pinealocytes produce melatonin, which helps maintain cardiac rhythm and regulate reproductive hormones. Part of an internal biological clock, secretion declines when the retina detects light. And you can see light optical view of pineal gland. You can see pinealocytes nuclei, this is parenchyma, and stroma consists of capillaries and neuroglial cells. Is typical nerve tissue. Also, light optical view of the pineal gland stained by hematoxylin and tyrosine, and you can see phenomenon of brain scent, this one. Pineal scent or brain scent. Acidophilic, densely acidophilic stained. And now we start characterization of peripheral endocrine glands. First, thyroid and parathyroid glands. The thyroid regulates metabolic rate and the adjacent parathyroids regulate calcium level. And you can see localization of thyroid gland, this one, and parathyroid glands. Anterior view, posterior view. You can see thyroid cartilage, and under the thyroid cartilage, you can see thyroid gland. Parathyroid glands are localized in posterior part of thyroid gland. Thyroid cartilage, thyroid gland, trachea. This is anterior view and posterior view, location of human thyroid and parathyroid glands, epiglottis, pharynx, thyroid gland, and 4 parathyroid glands. Posterior view. The thyroid gland. Thyroid gland secretes iodine-containing thyroid hormones and calcitonin, regulated by a negative feedback loop. Thyroid follicle is a structural and functional unit of thyroid gland. Thyroid follicle consists of the colloid, this one homogenic mass in the center of follicle, and follicular cells. We call them thyrocytes, follicular cells. Follicular cells secrete T3 and T4 hormones. Parafollicular cells are also known as C cells or light cells. Secrete calcitonin. C cells are localized between basal membrane and follicular cells. Also, stroma consists of blood capillaries and loose connective tissue between follicles. Structural and functional unit of thyroid gland is follicle, and you can see high power magnification of thyroid follicle. This one. We can see colloid, homogenic acidophilic mass, thyroglobulin with T3 and T4 hormones, and follicular cells, this one enormous cuboidal shaped. This is schematic diagram of thyroid gland follicle. We can see follicular cells, cuboidal shape. They have cuboidal shape. In apical part, present microvilli for absorption of T3 and T4 from colloid. We can see also groups of parafollicular C cells. This one, you can see that are localized between basal membrane and follicular cells, and also lymphatic and blood capillaries, very closely to follicular cells. Light optical view of the thyroid gland. Low power magnification, and on the left side are high power magnification. Follicles can have different size and different shape. Between follicles you can see capillaries. This is trichromic stain by Masson, and you can see that collagen fibers in loose connective tissue are stained in blue color. And in high power magnification, you can see follicular cells, this one, and C cells between follicular cells. And between follicles, very thin layers of loose connective tissue. Negative feedback of control of thyroid. Blood level of thyroid hormone falls below a set point. Positive stimulus. Hypothalamus releases thyro-releasing hormone. Thyro-releasing hormone affects two anterior pituitary, and anterior pituitary secretes thyro-stimulation hormone. TCH affects two thyroid gland, and thyroid hormones are secreted. Then, when in blood is T3 and T4 level increased, Rise of thyroid hormone level in blood inhibits the secretion of hypothalamus and pituitary. We say about negative feedback of control of thyroid. When blood level of T3 and T4 falls, this is positive stimulus to hypothalamus. When rise of thyroid hormone level in blood, then this is negative response to the negative stimulus to hypothalamus. Pathology. There are two types of thyroid pathology, hypothyroidism and hyperthyroidism. Hypothyroidism, it means low levels of thyroid hormones. Hyperthyroidism, it means high levels of thyroid hormones. Hypothyroidism, reasons: iodine deficiency, Graves' disease causes goiter, developmental, surgery, effect of radioactive iode, external radiation, autoimmune reason, for example, Hashimoto's disease, pituitary reason, and hypothalamic, but very rarely. Hyperthyroidism, thyrotoxicosis, diffuse toxic goiter, nodular adenoma, carcinoma, neonatal, secondary to TCH pituitary adenoma. Hypothyroidism. In childhood, cretinism. In adulthood, myxedema. Cretinism. Several retardation. The main important symptoms of cretinism in children. Several retardation, central nervous system and muscle system interrupted development, short stature, protruding tone, umbilical hernia, and maternal iodine deficiency. Myxedema in adulthood. Symptoms: sluggishness and cool skin. There are more symptoms, but I present you the main symptoms. Hyperthyroidism. The main important symptoms of hyperthyroidism are hypermetabolism, tachycardia, palpitations, increased T3 and T4 in blood, in peripheral blood, goiter, exophthalmos, you can see on this picture, tremor, hypermotility, thyroid storm, life-threatening. Diffuse toxic goiter or Graves' disease. Hyperthyroidism, exophthalmos, pretibial myxedema. Reason is autoimmune disease. It can be secreted autoantibodies to TCH. And you can compare light optical picture of normal thyroid. This is normal follicles and blood vessels, and Graves' disease light optical picture. You can see low amount of colloid in follicles, and follicular cells have high prismatic shape. You can compare histological structure of norm follicle, cuboidal shaped follicular cells, hypothyroidism, squamous shaped follicular cells, and large amount of colloid, more than in norm, and hyperthyroidism, prismatic-shaped follicular cells, and you can see empty places in colloid, empty from colloid, and less low amount of colloid in follicle. Next peripheral endocrine gland is the parathyroid gland. Parathyroid glands release parathyroid hormone PTH in response to low blood calcium level. Targets bone cells and kidney cells. In bone cells, PTH affects to osteoclasts. Osteoclasts start to resorb bone tissue, and calcium from bone migrate to bloodstream, and as a result, calcium level in blood rises. In kidney, PTH increases reabsorption of calcium in proximal convoluted tubules of kidney nephron. Also stimulates conversion of vitamin D to calcitriol in kidney cells, in cells of proximal convoluted tubules of nephron and kidney. Histological structure. It has also stroma and parenchyma. Stroma consists of capsule, trabecules, and trabecules are divided organ into lobules. In lobules, parenchyma is presented by chief cells and oxyphilic cells, and stroma is presented by fat cells and loose connective tissue with blood capillaries. Chief cells produce parathyroid hormone. You can see histological light optical view of parathyroid gland. This is stroma, blood capillaries of stroma, and parenchyma. Chief cells, small and basophilic, and larger and oxyphilic cells, larger oxyphilic cells. Parathyroid disorders, hyperparathyroidism and hypoparathyroidism can be present. Hyperparathyroidism when calcium level in blood increases due to rise of PTH, parathyroid hormone. Hyperparathyroidism can be primary or secondary. Primary usually adenomas, and secondary due to low calcium of renal failure due to renal diseases. Symptoms: bone pain, fractures because calcium level in bone decreases, nephrolithiasis, constipation, ulcers, gallstones. Calcium level decreases, and in gall bladder can be calcium stones and nephrolithiasis. Stones can be in kidney also. Depression, lethargy, weakness, fatigue, calcification, for example, walls of core, of heart. Hypoparathyroidism, when level of PTH, parathyroid hormone, decreases in blood. And what symptoms due to hypocalcemia? Reasons can be surgical, congenital, familial, idiopathic. Symptoms: neuromuscular irritability, mental status change, Parkinsonism-like effects, lens calcification, widened QT interval, its problem with heart, and defective carious in teeth. And last peripheral endocrine gland, the adrenal gland. Adrenal glands sit atop kidneys. You can see. this one. This is kidney and this is adrenal gland. Have two parts, adrenal cortex, peripheral part, and adrenal medulla, central part, that are controlled by different mechanisms and release different hormones. Moreover, look, they have different origin. Adrenal cortex is derived from visceral layer of splanchnotum in mesoderm, but adrenal medulla is derived from neuroectoderm, is part of nerve tissue. Adrenal cortex is divided into three layers. The outermost layer, glomerulosa, this one, produce cells in glomerulosa produce mineralocorticoids, for example, aldosterone. Fasciculata, the middle part of adrenal cortex, produce glucocorticoids, for example, cortisol, and reticularis, the deeper, the deepest part of adrenal cortex, produce gonadocorticoids, for example, androgens and estrogens. All these hormones, I remind you, are steroids, and steroids are produced from cholesterol in cells, in these cells. Due to this chemical nature of steroids, endocrine cells in adrenal cortex have well-developed smooth endoplasmic reticulum and mitochondria and lysosomes, but low-developed rough endoplasmic reticulum. Hormone control of adrenal cortex. The adrenal cortex secretes steroid hormones, small amounts of sex hormones, zona reticularis, schematic diagram, look please, secretes aldosterone. Aldosterone controls sodium and water reabsorption in the kidney. Aldosterone secretion occurs in zona glomerulosa, and as a result, from after action of aldosterone, we have increasing of blood pressure and increasing of blood volume due to rise of sodium and water reabsorption in the kidney. Cortisol affects metabolism and the stress response, controlled by negative feedback. Cortisol is secreted by endocrine cells in zona fasciculata. And you can see, compare localization of these zones in light optical picture of adrenal gland. Capsule, this one. Zona glomerulosa, this one. Zona fasciculata, this one, and zona reticularis. Cortisol negative feedback control. Blood level of cortisol falls below a set point. This is positive stimul to hypothalamus. Hypothalamus secretes cortisol releasing hormone. Cortisol releasing hormone effects to anterior pituitary. Anterior pituitary secretes ACTH, adrenocorticotropin hormone. Adrenocorticotropin hormone migrates to blood and from blood to adrenal cortex. In adrenal cortex is bound with receptors in nucleus of endocrine cells and is cause to secretion of steroid hormones. Cortisol is secreted and has the following effects. Effects of cortisol. First, cellular uptake of glucose from blood slows in many tissues, especially muscles, but not in the brain. Protein breakdown accelerates, especially in muscles. Some of the amino acids freed by this process get converted to glucose. And as a result, we have hyperglucosemia in blood after action of cortisol. Fats in adipose tissue are degraded to fatty acids and enter blood as an alternative energy source, indirectly conserving glucose for the brain. And when cortisol level increases in blood, then this is negative response of hypothalamus and anterior pituitary. Hypothalamus and pituitary detect rise in blood level of cortisol and slow its secretion. Nervous control of the adrenal medulla. The adrenal medulla contains specialized nerves of the sympathetic division that release epinephrine and norepinephrine, which stimulates the fight-flight response. Too much or too little cortisol. Cortisol has many functions. The main important functions are induces liver cells to break down glycogen, and as a result increased level of glucose in blood, suppresses uptake of glucose by other cells. Also, as a result, hyperglucosemia causes adipose cells to degrade fats and skeletal muscles to degrade proteins, suppresses immune response, suppresses inflammatory response. Look, please, last functions are very useful for treatment of autoimmune diseases and allergic diseases in clinic. Chronic stress can produce high cortisol levels, impairs growth, healing, sexual function, memory, high blood pressure, and blood sugar. Low cortisol level, hypocortisolism, Addison's disease results from adrenal gland damage. Blood pressure and blood sugar fall. Symptoms include fatigue, weakness, depression, weight loss, darkening of skin. And we called this problem Addison's disease. Hyperadrenalism, hyperaldosteronism, Cushing syndrome, and adrenogenital syndrome. These three syndromes can be cause hyperadrenalism. Cushing syndrome symptoms: central obesity, moon phases, weakness, hirsutism, hypertension, diabetes, osteoporosis, stria. It's all for today. I will see you soon for studying histology next time. See you. Bye.